G'day Frothers. Today we're taking a look at a method to remove these things. So this is a flush head sleeve bolt, a little climbing hanger on there. This is a climbing based channel after all, but if you're not a climber, hopefully you'll still learn something. So here's just a bolt by itself, and the key to removing these things is to stop the sleeve from expanding. So when you hammer this into the hole, you turn the bolt, the nut, which is actually cone shaped and inside the hole, you won't be able to see that, screws up the bolt. Because it's cone shaped, it causes the sleeve to expand out and grip the sides of the hole. That's what keeps it in. So if you're lucky and the bolt isn't all seized up, you can often just unscrew that and that'll stay inside the hole, and sometimes they'll just unscrew and unscrew, keep unscrewing, and then you'll be able to pull out the bolt. Hopefully you'll also be able to grab the sleeve with some pliers and poke something in the hole to pull out the nut. Doesn't always happen though. Unfortunately, your ability to remove these is often limited by the brand and specifically how tight they make the sleeve on these things. So this one here is Ramset brand. So these ones tend to be pretty loose in the sleeve. So I'll just install it as I would normally for like a climbing bolt. So often for climbing bolts, you'll have the bolt and the washer like that, goes onto the hanger, then the sleeve, and then the nut. This is a 12mm hole drilled some time ago for another demonstration. Yeah, and so already you can see that that sleeve is not very tight. If we look at another brand, so this is Hobson brand, it's got these little, I don't know, bulges on there. It is not going in. So that needs to be hammered all the way in. This brand, very hard to get out. Some brands you encounter will also be hard to get out, in which case you may not be able to get them out at all, but we'll take a look at that later. So if you're lucky and it is a friendly brand to remove, it should go in most of the way. Need a bit of a tap at the end. And also, hopefully, they have not seized the nut. So that's a fairly standard climbing bolt. This hanger has been involved in a pull test, so okay. So if you're lucky, you can just loosen this, and some of them will just stop at this point because the nut and the sleeve are not touching down in the hole, in which case apply some tension while undoing. And there you go. So the nut is still in there. You should be able to get some vice grips or something like that in there and remove the sleeve. And then you'll need to get your hole cleaning brush, poke it down, and then fish out the nut on there. So what if the nut is seized on there? Often these things will just be perma spinners. And so this one is actually a perma spinner that I managed to get out. They become perma spinners because the nut will gall, it'll seize onto there. Stainless steel is pretty prone to galling, especially if you just over tighten it. So that nut is stuck on there and basically inside the hole. It can't be pulled out because it's engaging the expansion mechanism. But then it also can't be done up because the nut is just going to spin around down the bottom there. So what you can do in this case, and what I did here, is I'll put it back in and see if we could do it again. Firstly, you loosen it, try and loosen it. Now this one is a perma spinner, so it's just going to spin forever. To engage the nut at the base of the hole, apply some outward tension. So in a climbing situation, you can just clip this onto your belay loop and lean right back on it. And then you can keep trying to loosen that nut off. Now this nut is seized, but what you can do if you turn it enough, it'll usually come out a little bit. You can then jam it with a hammer just to create a little space underneath there. And then you've got to get under there and try and grab the sleeve with some pointy vice grips. You've got to grab onto the sleeve. You're actually stopping it from engaging against the wedge, the nut. And yes, this can take a very long time, and sometimes you do just need to call it quits. It also helps to try and find, sorry, can you see that there? It also helps to try and find the split in the sleeve and compress it that way. So I'm going to try and press it next to either side of that split. And eventually you can get it out. So that's medium difficulty. That can still take a very long time. From memory, it probably took me 20 minutes to extract this bolt. It was a small bit of rock, and you just can't keep drilling in small bits of rock. So if you can just jam it out with a hammer and get some vice grips under and grab the sleeve, that's often all you need to do. But in this case, you can see that that extra turning, remember at the start, applying tension and then turning, that's actually worn down the cone. So that means if you pull on it, the cone isn't going to be expanding properly. And so that's how this one was removed. But that was easy and medium. This is going to be hard. So this is Hobson brand, goes in very tight into the hole. If you ever saw this video of me demonstrating how to install these bolts and you were wondering why I didn't show how to remove them, well, it's because I was using this brand and I couldn't get it out. So this one, Hobson, in we go. Ugh, tight. I'll just put that over there so you can see from this angle. So I don't know why you'd be removing a bolt that good, but anyway, if in case you did, maybe we'll get lucky and we'll be able to just unscrew. So I'm going to be pulling outwards on the hanger the whole time as well, just to keep the nut engaged. Okay, this seems like it's going to be cooperating, although I can feel that the sleeve is actually a bit mangled because that's still really tight. There we go. Okay, so sometimes that's all you'll be left with. Unfortunately, they are not easy to get out. Now, I'm working on a tool to extract these. I have seen people using threading taps. I really don't think a tap is going to get that out. You heard how tight it went in. It's like a piton. So what I've often attempted to do, and almost always failed, is actually to kind of fold the two sides over. First, if you want to just try gripping on, so it really helps to have good quality vice grips, locking pliers. Vice grips is a brand. Oh God, that's bad for him. But the idea is to try and fold it over. And if you can keep folding it over enough, you can kind of press it in and then it hasn't really expanded anymore. But that's hard to do, that's a lot of work, and there's no guarantee you'll get it out. So if you've gotten to this stage, reconsider your need to reuse that hole, because honestly, it's going to be a lot of work. Your legs are going to be asleep in no time. So one option I've tried, which works sometimes, is you can actually get some kind of small chisel. This is actually an old SDS bit. It is 5 millimeters. And you actually drive that all the way in to fold that thing down. To fold that down along the length. You could probably use a few things for that, but an SDS bit is good because A, I've got a million and I'm never going to use a 5 millimeter bit. But also tungsten carbide, it's chisel shaped, and you can also mechanize the process. Okay, so have I made this better or worse? Can't tell yet, but it's well and truly folded. Oh yeah, it seems pretty loose too. So, come on baby. Okay, so there you go. Hard. So there you go guys, that is the hard way. Oh wait, sorry, the sleeve's still in there, isn't it? Don't forget the sleeve, don't go whacking bolts in until your hole is cleaned again. There you go, easy, medium, hard. Honestly, only bother with the hard if you really, really need to reuse this exact hole. If you have the option of drilling it out with a core drill, you know, drilling out the outside of that and removing the entire thing, or just, you know, chopping that off, bashing the sleeve in, covering it up, drilling a hole directly next to it and using some kind of epoxy glue-in bolt. You have a lot of options. I really don't recommend doing that unless you really have to. And so what if you're not actually in a rock climbing situation? You've got some of these bolts holding maybe a railing or something down. Well, you're gonna need to get a wrecking bar, pry that whole thing up a little bit so you've got a bit of room. You maybe then have to chop off the bolt above the fixture, but then you should be able to access the sleeve and stuff, tap in the bolt very slightly to loosen it off, and then pull out the sleeve, do all that crap that I just showed you. Also, luckily concrete, usually a lot softer than rock, so you could usually scrape it out a little bit more than this sort of drill damage here. So anyway, frothers, hopefully you never have to do this, but you know, often it happens, especially if you're doing rebolting and stuff like I sometimes do. So happy climbing, happy rebolting, happy whatever the hell you're doing. Thanks for watching, I'll scratch you later.